NetsBoys. Let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy. He thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bring your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. There is a lot to go over and discuss today, so I'm just going to go right in and not waste time so this video doesn't go and become like 5 hours long. So unless you lived in a rock, under a rock, or in Iraq the last few days, you have heard the news that the Nets had fired Lionel Hollins and had reassigned Billy King to some irrelevant task in the Nets organization. This is something that I feel like had to happen. You know, the Nets, at the time, were 10-28, and they really were struggling, and they weren't going anywhere, and I thought that maybe Billy King could have salvaged something and pulled off one of his classic Billy King blow-up-in-your-face deals, but he did it. And Prokhorov decided to reassign him and fire Lionel Hollins. And poor Lionel Hollins, I mean, it's not his fault about this Nets team. You know, it was just more of a circumstantial firing. You know, Lionel Hollins is kind of a win-now coach. He doesn't really have the tolerance or the patience for a young team or a team that's a losing team that's trying to develop and get better. So once the Nets really started losing a lot, you know, it kind of became obvious that Hollins had to go because certain players like, you know, Markel Brown and Thomas Robinson weren't really seeing their opportunities, and Sergei Karasev weren't quite seeing their opportunities to try to prove themselves, which is honestly what the Nets are starting to try to do at this point of the season. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So anyway, this whole shuffle has happened now. Billy King is out. The Nets currently don't have a general manager right now, but, you know, Prokhorov is going to try to address that eventually. He's looking at some people. Word on the street is Brian Colangelo. I think that's how you say his name. You know, he used to be the GM of the Raptors. Before that, he was notoriously known for the Phoenix Suns organization, where he created that, you know, Steve Nash, Shaquille O'Neal, Amari Stoudemire type team that they had that was really good. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal was kind of irrelevant at that point, but that was one of the moves he made. It was the Amari Stoudemire, Steve Nash team. Sean Marion, that team that was really good in Phoenix, he was created that team. There's some rumors that he might be the new general manager of the Nets. Listen, I don't know. Personally, as long as they don't make any dumb moves, I don't care who it is at this point. But there needs to be somebody, because right now the trade deadline is less than a month away, or about a month away, and the Nets don't have anyone really to make any moves or look to make any moves, and I still think the Nets should look into making a couple moves that can help to set them up for next season. And once again, I'll go into that later on as well in this video. So that's that with that. And as for now, for the coach, Tony Brown is going to take over, and he got his first win the other night against the Knicks. Another thing we're going to go over, like I said, a lot to talk about in this video. And you know what? Well, you know, some coaching candidates that have been thrown out there, you know, Mark Jackson, who would be my choice, Tom Thibodeau, whatever. He was someone else who was thrown out there. And, of course, the big one, John Calipari, who would be offered not just the coaching but also head of operations or like a team president type situation, which, listen, Net fans, as much as it would be great if they got Calipari, I think there might be a 1% chance of that actually happening. Calipari isn't leaving Kentucky. He loves what he's built in Kentucky, that the dynasty that is Kentucky basketball. He loves it there, and I don't see him leaving. I know his agent listed a price, but I think that was just a price for show, saying, you know, go ahead, call my bluff. Because if the Nets call the bluff and give him, I think it was $120 million for 10 years, that's a little ridiculous. Just saying. Even for someone like Calipari, who, by the way, does not have a great track record in the NBA. So I don't know if that's really worth it. completely aside the point. My guy would be Mark Jackson. I like Mark Jackson. I always thought he was a good old school type of coach, but has the patience and tolerance and understanding to develop with young players and work within a system. Plus, the guy likes Brooke Lopez. I know that back when he was a commentator for the Yes Network, he loves Brooke Lopez, and so do I. So I think that would work out well. Thibodeau, I think would be interesting to see. You know, to me, Thibodeau isn't much different than Lionel Hollins. So they were both defensive toughness coaches, and I'll be honest, I don't know if Tom Thibodeau is going to be an improvement. I think it's almost like the same type of coach. You know what I mean? A no nonsense, deep first, slow paced type of team coach. If you're going to go with the Thibodeau route, personally, I would have just kept Hollins. Does Thibodeau have more patience with developing players? A little bit, but I don't think that's that smart of a move. So my vote would be Mark Jackson. But for the time being, it's Tony Brown. And for the time being, the Nets are looking for a general manager. Now, obviously, the whole situation with the Nets is completely up in the air. Who knows what's going to happen with this team? I still think that they need to go out and make a couple moves for next season. And in the interview, or the press conference to be more correct, with Mikhail Prokhorov, he basically said the Nets are going to hit a small reset this year and that he hopes to build a contender starting next season. So he's not looking to blow up this team. And I don't think he should. I know there's a lot of people out there saying, Nets have no draft picks. They need to trade Lopez. They need to trade Young. They need to start from scratch. Let's get something straight for here. Those two guys are the only reason why the Nets are even remotely a respectable team. And they're a little respectable, let's be honest. They have good wins over some good teams like the Celtics, like the Bulls, the Rockets. They have some good wins. The Knicks the other night, they have some wins. They're a respectable team. You get rid of those guys, you're completely alienating the remainder of your almost non-existent fan base. The other thing is, you're not going to get enough when it comes to picks in trading either of those guys, because the teams that are going to want those players are teams that are playoff teams who think that they can win a championship with one of those two guys. So the picks you're going to get are going to be, 20, 21, 20 through 30 most likely. You're not going to get a lottery pick, which honestly, if you're going to trade away your franchise player, in especially Brooke Lopez, who's 27, who's only getting better, who's got at least 5 legitimate good years left bearing injury, if you're going to trade away your franchise player, you've got to get yourself a lottery, if not better, top 5 pick in that deal. So, me personally, not worth it. That being said, there is one scenario in which I would say, yes, it's okay to trade Brooke Lopez. And one scenario only. One. And that's if they trade Brooke Lopez to the Celtics for the Nets draft pick back. That is the only situation it's okay. The Nets unprotected draft pick that they traded in the dumb Garnett, Pierce, Terry deal say, okay, listen, we'll give you Brooke Lopez if you give us David Lee, and I want a young player too. So David Lee, maybe Kelly Olynyk, and our draft pick back. Now that is very asking for a lot if you think about it, especially for where that pick is going to become for the Celtics. But that's the only situation, and that's what I want. If you're trading your franchise player, you better get yourself a top 5 pick and a good young player to substitute in, and David Lee would just fill out the salary. But Kelly Olynyk is a good young player you can develop around, not around, but a good young player as well. That's what you do. When you trade a franchise player, a star player, you want to get at least one young player and one pick. And in this case with the Nets, it should be their own pick because the team is going to be terrible, and therefore they can tank, and they can finally get a top 5 pick. And that's the only situation that I think the Nets should trade Brooke Lopez. Thaddeus Young, I still don't think the Nets should trade him either because he's working really well with Lopez. For any type of draft pick, I think it's okay to go after Trae Young, but same thing. If you're trading either one of those guys, you've got to get a draft pick and a young player. And in case of Lopez, there's only one draft pick, and that's the Nets draft pick back is the only pick. Only pick. That being said, I don't think the Nets should trade either of them. At least not yet. Listen, obviously the Nets' strategy is to pursue teams in free agency next season. And there's a lot of good name free agents that are going to be out there. Notice I said good, not great. Look, I know everyone's talking about Kevin Durant and so on and so forth, but listen, I don't think the Nets have a shot for Durant or anyone like that. But there's a lot of second tier players like Mike Conley or a Brandon Jennings or an Eric Gordon, Courtney Lee, Ryan Anderson, Nicholas Batum, Luau Deng, Harrison Barnes. He could enter the free agent market. These are a lot of really good young players that the Nets could ultimately get. Maybe DeMar DeRozan, if he exercises his early termination clause in his contract, he could be a free agent. Bradley Beal might be one, depending on how things go over there. He might be restricted. But there's a lot of free agents the Nets could go after. And with $40 million of cap space, you can get 4 or 5 really good players. And you know what? If you get 4 or 5 really good players, you pair them with Thaddeus Young and Brook Lopez, this Nets team is now a playoff team, and a good playoff team, and a team that can compete in the Eastern Conference. So that is obviously what the goal is for the Nets moving forward. This season, it's all about development. Prokhorov said that to Tony Brown, he wants to see what the Nets have. That's why if you've seen the last few games, or last 2 games, I'm not even going to really dive into the Spurs game because that was inevitable. You're seeing a rotation of non-existence. You're seeing every single player play. The game against the Knicks, you saw Karasev, you saw Bogdanovic, you saw Larkin, you saw Donald Sloan, you saw Ellington, you saw, I think I said Karasev already. You saw basically everyone but Markel Brown, which is interesting. I know Markel Brown's been hurt here and there this year, but, the Nets are playing all those guys. Thomas Robinson, Andrea Bargnani, they're all being played because they're all kind of auditioning for, are they a good enough player to have on this team next season? Because that's the only thing the Nets can do. That's the only thing the Nets can do right now. The season's a lost cause. They're not making the playoffs. So that is what Tony Brown's going to do, and that's what their Nets are doing. And they have to. They have to see what they can do, see who they got, and see who plays well. And the other reason why it's good for the Nets to do that now is come trade deadline, maybe some of these players have stood out enough to other teams, and then they can move. Because right now, you look at the assets the Nets have to try to acquire any type of talent. It's really Bojan Bogdanovic and, Chris McCullough and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. That's it. I don't think any other team would want any of the other players on the Nets right now. Jack would have been a player before he got hurt. Joe Johnson is somebody that a team could use, but his contract is so big. But just those 3 players are the only players that I feel like a team would say, okay, we'll work out a deal and try to get those players. That being said, I still think there's moves that can be done involving those players, but I'm not going to dive into that. That you can resort back to my 5 trades the Nets should do video involving some of those players as well that the Nets should look into doing. But they can still do that. But maybe another player stands out. Maybe Willie Reed, I forgot about him, he played as well. Maybe Willie Reed comes out and proves that he's pretty good. Maybe Markel Brown has some good stretches of games and teams say, you know what, I'll give you, the 29th overall pick from Markel Brown. This is obviously would be a team that's a playoff team or something. You never know. Who knows? If players start playing well, piques teams' interests, maybe the Nets can make a move or two this trade deadline and better themselves. Because the truth of the matter is, you can go after everyone in the world in free agency. Unless you can lure them in, it's kind of tough to get these players. It's almost smarter for the Nets to try to trade for the players that they want to have on their team next season, and then do the whole Darren Williams, you're on the team now, you're seeing how it's run, let's recruit you while you're in the organization. Like the Nets did with Darren Williams. That's what they did. They traded for Darren Williams. He had a year and a half left on his contract, and they spent that entire year and a half convincing him to stay with the team. It's much easier for a free agent to decide to stay with a team that wants him that entered the free agent market where every team is coming at him. So that's part of the advantages of trading for players. that's why I think the Nets should try to look into trading for some players like maybe an Eric Gordon or a Ty Lawson or Brandon Jennings. Players who I think the Nets could go after in free agency next season, but try to bring them in now. And trade away some pieces of players that the Nets may not be needing next season or may not be using next season. Just an option. But that's all up to whoever the future general manager is, which we don't know yet. We don't know. So that's just some of my ideas spitballing. But overall, this Nets team is still a team that's kind of disappointing and frustrating to watch. But they had a really good game against the Knicks. I was really proud about the way they battled the Knicks. I know the Knicks didn't have Carmelo, but whatever. Because Derek Williams scored 31 points. And so if Melo was playing, Derek Williams wouldn't have scored 31, so I don't see a problem with that. Thaddeus Young had a great job against Porzingis. I was very impressed with how well he guarded him. Lopez really dominated, and you know what? I think Brook Lopez could have had a huge game. He ended up with 20 points and 8 rebounds. I think he had a huge game if Tony Brown wasn't playing with the rotation. I think Lopez only played, 30 minutes. If Lopez played 36 minutes, he could have had a 30-point, 10, 15 rebound game. Something like that. It was really impressive. The Nets played well. But the thing that drove me crazy was Bojan Bogdanovic was hitting threes and Joe Johnson was making shots. And I just took some steps back and I said, holy crap. If only you two ding-dongs were doing that throughout this whole entire season, the Nets would have at least 5 more wins. Like, that's the truth of the matter. If Bogdanovic has been hitting threes regularly like he was in that game, same thing with Wayne Ellington, hot start, and Shane Larkin. If the Nets played like the way they played against the Knicks, the Nets would have at least 15 wins this season, at least 5 or 6 more wins, and they'd be more in the playoff hunt and be more willing to make some moves. It's unbelievable. I mean, Bojan Bogdanovic was nailing threes. Joe Johnson made clutch baskets down the stretch like he used to. He looked like the Joe Johnson of old. Shane Larkin was making big plays. Like, I couldn't believe it. And that's the frustrating thing about this team. You can see them play well, and you say, this team can play well. We've seen it. They beat the Bulls. They beat the Rockets twice. They've beaten the Celtics. They've beaten the Knicks. They've beaten good teams, and you can see the level of talent. Well, excuse me. There is no real much level of talent, but you see the potential that the team can play, and then they'll be terrible the next game. And that's the frustrating thing with the Nets. And that's why I just really wish they make a move or two to make things better for this season and salvage what you can of this year and go into free agency and make the team look more respectable. There. One more thing to go over before the end of this video. There was one thing that, other than the good play of the Nets, but there's one big thing I took away from that Nets-Knicks game. And that was the embarrassment that is the Brooklyn Nets fans. And I am usually not one to try to alienate or call out people, but I'm doing it right now. Where are you? For, all we heard when the Nets moved to Brooklyn was how loyal and how passionate Brooklyn fans are. How much they wanted their own team back. How much that it was going to be a great fan base and one of the best fan bases in the NBA. If you watch that Knicks-Nets game, it was a complete embarrassment. There might have been 30% Nets fans there. It wasn't even a home game. It was a Knicks home game. Look, I know the Nets haven't done a good job this year. They've looked really bad. They just traded away half their, not traded away. They just fired and half their, top managed, their organization. It's in a little flux. Yes, I understand that. I understand the team isn't good. But you're going to stand here and tell me, who, by the way, I'm from New Jersey, and I was very crushed when the Nets moved from New Jersey to Brooklyn because I have a lot of New Jersey pride. But you're going to come and tell me that I'm a worse fan? Because that's what everyone did. They said, good thing they're leaving New Jersey, terrible fan base, they never supported the Nets, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that. And then you're going to go and let your crosstown rivals come to your arena and completely out-cheer you, and you're going to tell me you're better than, no, absolutely not. That was disgusting. And I think it is appalling to even contemplate the idea that these alleged Brooklyn fans are ever better than the New Jersey Nets fans. Because you want to know something about the New Jersey Nets fans? They were relatively consistent. Even when the Nets won 11 games, they still had a decent fan base. Not a great fan base. What do you expect? But here's something that is good. When they played the Knicks, because they're in New Jersey, that's part of the reason, there were less Knicks fans there. I mean, there's still always going to be a lot of Knicks fans there, but still, I just don't understand where these alleged great fans are. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen it in the 3.5 years that the Nets have been in Brooklyn, other than the first year where everyone was excited about it. I haven't seen it. Last year, there were a lot of inconsistent Nets crowds. And the Nets made the playoffs last year. Yes, they were a 38-win team, but still. And, you know, I shouldn't get too angry because it's understandable, especially when you're playing the Knicks, who have something to play for, and the Knicks will always own New York. There's no way the Nets will ever own New York. When you're the second team in the city, you're not going to be, no matter how good you are, you're not going to own the city. But I just was very disappointed. I mean, kudos to the PA announcer at the Barclays Center, because he was the only one he literally was like antagonizing the crowd by constantly yelling the Nets players when they scored, and very quietly saying the Knicks players. Now, he does that normally, but he was really getting into it. And if you watch the game and listen to the game, you could hear he was really trying to get the crowd going. And it's just a disappointment. I'm sorry. And I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted as a fan. You know, if I lived closer to Brooklyn, by the way, I live about 2 hours away from Brooklyn. If I lived closer to Brooklyn, I would be at almost every Nets game, regardless of what their record is. Because I'm a passionate fan, and I'm passionate about my team, regardless of how well they play. The year they won 11 games, I wore my Nets hat every day, and I was proud of that team because they played hard. They didn't have the talent, whatever. That was true. They didn't have a lot of talent, but they played hard, and I'm a passionate basketball fan, and I will always stand by my team regardless of how bad they play. And you're going to go around and be this Brooklyn Nets fan base, and you don't even go and support your team in a rivalry. A rivalry. Disgusting. Just absolutely disgusting. And it better stop. And now look, maybe if Nets start winning, of course the Nets fans will start showing up. But you know what? Very disappointed. Very disappointed in the Brooklyn fan base. And coming from someone who wishes the Nets were still in New Jersey. It's true. I do. I wish they were still in New Jersey. Because at least then I could go and watch some Nets games like I did when they're in New Jersey. I went to at least 10, 15 Nets games, and they were still kind of far from me because I live in the west side of Jersey, and I still had to drive an hour to go to New Jersey Nets games, but I still went to as many as I could. Because I was a respectful, proud fan. So where are you, Brooklyn fans? I know you're out there. There has to be. Because I saw you guys when the Nets first moved to Brooklyn. I was in that stadium chanting, Brooklyn, Brooklyn, like everyone else. And now, when the Nets need a fan base the most, when they're struggling, you guys turn your backs. Disgusting. Okay, ran over. So there you have it. That's the situation with the Nets. I went a little bit longer than I wanted to. I just got really angry about the Nets fan base. And, you know, if you're a true Brooklyn Nets fan, then I'm not yelling at you because you probably feel the same way I do. But if you're one of those flaky fans, come on, wise up. Respect your borough, respect your city, respect your team. And keep your eyes open for the next NetsBoy. And until then, this is NetsBoy signing off. When the Nets just can't